Chris, I just want to thank you for joining us here at the DC Summit. I'm delighted to have a chance to talk with you here. I know many of my colleagues in the audience are looking forward to hearing from you. We just celebrated the first anniversary of the executive order improving the nation's cybersecurity just earlier this month, May 12th. And we're coming up on the first anniversary of the stand-up of the Office of the National Cyber Director. These were two very significant developments in how the U.S. government is organizing to address cybersecurity issues facing the nation, and they have important implications for the private sector, including companies like AWS and the broader ecosystem that is part of AWS. There has truly been an unprecedented amount of cyber, activity over the course of this past year, including the developments from the government. Chris, in your office, the Office of Management and Budget, the Office of the National Cyber Director have been central to much, if not all of it. And today, I think we're going to dig into some of these details related to that and the role of the Office of the National Cyber Director and where the federal government is heading in cybersecurity. So without further ado, let's get to the questions, the meat of the subject.
Sounds good.
So looking back over the past year of the administration's efforts, particularly in the context of implementing the executive order, what are you most proud of? What are your highlights or any lessons learned that you had?
Yeah, well, for all of you in this room who've been paying attention, it's been a pretty busy year. We were talking about this backstage. Government, when it rains, it pours. When we go in, we go big. So it's been exciting as someone who worked in this office before in the Obama administration to kind of come back and have the opportunity to continue to build off of all of the initiatives that we were working on then. And just determine where things are at and kind of use as a starting point. I'd say that's the biggest lesson learned is you have to do that. There's been so much good work done, foundational programs like CDM, Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation, which have been building out these capabilities of vulnerability management, asset management, identity management, and we've built on top of that with all of the stuff that we've done. So that's been kind of one key thing that I would highlight. One of the things that I think our office is most proud of is, we put out a lot of policy, is the zero trust strategy. And in large part, it's because we built it together with industry. And there's no way that we felt like we were going to get it right. So we broke our own rules a little bit from the EO and went out for public comment. And we got just a huge amount of interest. I know most people wouldn't know the number, but we got 130, 140 independent submissions. That's a lot. Right? People generally aren't that interested in government policy. and a lot of those were corporate submissions, but there are also independent security researchers who have a ton of expertise in this space, and we listened to whatever we could. And the way that I think about the strategy is it's a few things. It's not the full plan, right? It's the beginning plan. It's what are the readiness activities, where are we actually at as US federal government, and what do we need to do to get to that first baseline level of maturity in all the zero trust capabilities. And we can't leave one capability line behind. And so what we're able to do now is start to build out across all agencies in a common baseline. We'll be able to benchmark against it. We'll be able to metric it, see how we're doing, and use lessons learned across. So, it really is a strategic approach that we're building out, and look forward to probably talking a little bit more about that today too.
No, excellent. The executive order included a lot to do for some of the key agencies, on the implementation side of things, especially OMB, NIST, and CISA. Even before the guidance really had come out, they had a lot of things that they needed to implement. What do you think will be most impactful for federal civilian cybersecurity? Do you have like a top 3 or something of that nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's interesting you highlight that we did instruct a series of things in the executive order before we built the policy, which took several months in most cases. I think it was just a reflection of the urgent moment that we all felt. You know, I personally had been the CISO in the campaign, and then I was pulled into transition when SolarWinds occurred, and you know, with the thought that I would have this job to really start managing that with my colleagues that also came into key roles early on, and that did help give a leg up. And so when we came in, it was like, all right, we're gonna do everything, right? So yeah, I mean that's the first thing that I really kind of highlighted about that. But I don't know.
Well, I think that one of the things, that we kind of took away from it was that there was really that the feeling of good intent that you really were trying to help and push things forward with working with industry to do so. So, I think from, at least from our perspective, being part of and helping to guide, the larger industry, I think that's that partnership really has paid off and is continuing down that road. So, we're, at least from the AWS perspective, pretty pleased with how the administration's working forward in that space.
Well, and it allowed us to kind of have that moment for agencies to see where we were headed to.
Yeah.
So that when you look at the Zero Trust strategy we ended up putting out, we had that early instruction for them to start thinking about it and pull together the plan that they had to date, and then they could update it later when the guidance came out. And we're doing similar plays, CJ, on secure software development, contract clauses. There was a number of things that we just forecast in those early days of like, we got to take on these root cause issues, but then we needed more time to get the full policy together.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We were obviously glad to see the recognition from the White House of the value that cloud can provide, AWS for sure, can provide from a security perspective. How is cloud adoption factoring into your plans and objectives for digital transformation and security uplift? And what's next on your radar from a cloud security perspective?
Yeah, well, good news is government's been focused on cloud since at least 2011. We had the cloud first policies, as you're aware. And there's been a lot of involvement over time, 2017 timeframe, updated that with Cloud Smart, just identifying all of the gaps and the focus areas that needed to be in play. And security was a big one. By 2017, it was a different picture. So it's been a learning experience, but as you can see in EO 14028, we're extremely bullish on moving to the cloud. I mean, there's obviously a lot that agencies are going to need to learn to do and expertise that they're going to need to continue to hire for, recruit for, and hire out to make sure that we do it right. But the opportunities of building secure cloud environments and just the opportunity to have a zero trust environment, I mean, it's so much higher if you start with what companies like yourself can provide, and starting with a baseline of least privilege and the identity management permissions and all the policies. And I think also just making it easy for those who don't have the skills and having group policies that can be set. But then if they do, giving the ability to go in and get, fine tune and really get very granular in how you're doing permissions. You can go very deep in zero trust implementation. You can go kind of all the way full stack, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is that, how have you seen the agency adoption so far of zero trust? Is that something that's on the radar? Obviously, the executive order in that space.
I mean, it's I think everybody is moving that direction. A lot had kind of understood that this was the direction before we put out the strategy, and a lot are learning what it means now, which is another key benefit from that strategy we put out. We just defined it. We said, look, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. We don't believe it's one tool. We believe it's these principles and these capabilities, and here's some starting actions. And so there's certain things we put in there that are uncomfortable for agencies, like, hey, face off an application straight out to the internet, and and like start to baby steps move away from your old approach of everything through VPN, and really start to make these transitions that are going to be harder and that can be scary to folks.
How much do you think the pandemic actually accelerated adoption of zero trust, or did it, I guess, in
I
the
think it did. I think it absolutely did. I think a lot of the CIOs and CISOs across federal government just kind of understood the exposure that ramped up as soon as they had to make decisions that they had to make. and I was the chief security officer of the state of Michigan at the time, and I made a lot of policy exceptions that went to the change review board later and had, end dates on them to keep track of all the things we were doing. So you do see a lot of agencies kind of moving towards like SASE technologies and things like that as a key indicator of that.
Yeah, I think there was for a lot of the industry and a lot of companies, governments included, I think the amount of VPN demand at the beginning of the pandemic kind of overwhelmed and kind of forced a hand towards zero trust in a way.
Yeah, and like anything in government, it's like also government policy that sometimes needs to be updated behind too. I mean, a lot of the hesitance at the state level was just ensuring that everybody was staying compliant with federal regulations, because we all hold various types of federal data. I had 15 different types of data at the state of Michigan, right? And so, there's a lot of requirements that you keep in mind. So it's not just like what makes sense logically, technically.
Right.
When you're in government, you have all these other considerations that are really important.
Were there any relief as far as some of those requirements from both federal and state during those times?
There wasn't a full back off in any instance that I faced, at least. But I think an understanding that they would delay or have some level of understanding. But I'll be honest with you, from the state perspective at the time, not really. Nothing really fully changed.
Gotcha.
So I'm here now.
Right.
and one of those things that we're doing is trying to really update the way we do performance management across federal government. That's another thing that we've been updating, is the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, and the metrics that we put out and the way we work with IGs to assess agency performance. Like, we made a big shift this year in saying, hey, we don't need to assess all of the control functions every single year. I mean, that's just not kind of getting us to success. I think everyone saw that. So let's focus on a core set of controls. And so we'll do those annually, and we can really make sure that those are the ones that are getting us the most outcomes, the risk proxies that look like we're getting outcomes at least. Yeah. And just kind of get really good at those. And every other year, we'll look at more of the business process controls that should be there, but
yeah. Is there any thought, one of the things that, you were talking about SolarWinds earlier and things like that, is there any thought that in that kind of process, the things that you pay attention may be the things that, are starting to create the most risk, or at least seeing that? That's one of the things that we like to do, is vector, prioritization of different types of things based upon the adoption of CVEs or otherwise by criminal actors or along those lines, so that you're actually, once you see the threat kind of moving in the adoption of different vulnerabilities or whatever by an actor or a group of actors. We saw that leading up to Russia into Ukraine, and vector to make sure that the things that were pointy ends were taken care of, and that may be one of the things in the metrics you can actually kind of vector towards.
Could agree more. And so we really focused a lot on getting ground truth on where agencies are with some of the core capabilities to be able to assess your outside-in risk. So the red teaming, vulnerability disclosure programs, but not just you have them, right? It's kind of a boring question. How is it going? Are you getting reports? How's it working inside your organization? Are you having struggles as you work through that? I launched a coordinated disclosure program at a major Fortune 50 company. It's hard, right? And it takes a lot of communication around it. So I think those are key things that we're driving towards. But to your point explicitly, I think it's really important to look at what CISA has been doing. They put out Binding Operational Directive 2201, which is really about what you're talking about, focusing on top CVEs that are being exploited in the wild, and continuing to put that on that list to make sure that those are the things that are being addressed first. And we can scorecard and metric that. So then over time, we can start to look at how are we doing in drawing down what is pretty exigent risk and is kept alive and updated. And are we doing a good job of that? And if not, why? Yeah. So that we can put more policy prescriptions behind it.
I think that's a really good initiative, especially as resources are tight, regardless of the size of the agency or company, and being able to target your resources to the things that are based upon actual known threat and threat intelligence potentially. that you're getting. So that's I think one of the things in the last year that we've really enjoyed in the interaction with CISA is the cooperation and actually the partnership of actually information flowing in both directions. So hit you with the kind of the perfunctory question. What do you see as the biggest challenges ahead with regard to completing the remaining deliverables from the Cyber EO? So big challenges, lots of them.
There are. Well, look, we took on a lot at once. So that's just one, having capacity to do a lot of hard things at once is always a challenge, but it's a nice problem to have. There's a couple explicit ones that I'd highlight that are still remaining. We really picked multi-factor authentication, but we've been focusing on strong multi-factor, looking at FIDO2, and encryption at rest and in transit, and just putting more focus on things like making sure that your data is encrypted in transit, and even if you think that it's internally protected, just that's out the window everywhere. That's kind of a new big thing, right? That we hadn't necessarily said all applications, even with processing low data types, must have strong multi-factor. That wasn't a requirement, right? A year ago. Same with the strictness of encrypted everywhere. So that's hard, right? Agencies need to plan for that, budget for that, take a risk prioritized approach for it all, do your high value assets first, get certain environments buttoned up. So it's, that's going to take a while. But also it's just about implementation. I mean, all of this, it's going to be a journey and culture change. So that's why we're also focused at the agency head level, deputy secretaries, really working through how are they governing this risk, trying to see if we can adopt some of the industry models that work well, where you've got mission owners and IT professionals sitting on these boards, so there's a cross understanding. And can we take some of these practices that work well in industry and thread them in, in that full stack of culture, management, risk management layer, all the way down through technical zero trust architecture changes.
Gotcha. No, excellent. In March, OMB issued an RFI, request for information, on the implementation of software supply chain security guidance, referred to as Section 4, of 1428. Even after the OMB's RFI workshop that they held to address the industry questions, there seems to be some uncertainty about the implementation process and timeline for the security requirements themselves. Is there anything that you can share? Like we were talking about earlier, everything's still iteratively moving forward, but is there anything you'd like to share in that regard?
Yeah, I guess I'd also start foundationally for those who maybe less familiar. The executive order had a whole section which started with directing NIST to put together a secure software development framework. And so they did that. And that was done with a number of workshops and collection of best practices and some new, like SBOM and things like that. So that framework's together, and that's a really helpful resource. And now what we're saying is, if you're going to sell software to government, we want you to attest to following this framework. And that's a tricky thing. It's a brand new framework. What we don't want to stand in is some sort of new compliance regime that people are confused about. Yeah. So we're being very cautious in how we develop our policy guidance on that, which is why we created that workshop, did the RFI. We kind of added that on again. That wasn't in the original executive order. That was an implementation, us just realizing we needed more dialogue and we needed to understand how to do this successfully. So I think, what I can share, the challenge there is it's a government policy memo, so those aren't the types of things that we can put out for public comment, but in every case. But we have taken the feedback very seriously. We want consistency of application here. We want a rational approach, just as much as vendors don't want to be attesting and or responding to 100 different ways to all of the different agencies. We don't want agencies asking in 100 different ways. I mean, I am equally incented with that very, very real and good concern. And so what I can say is we've been taking it very seriously, and we hope that, our guidance is going to be an approach that allows us to continue to build this together sensibly. But I will say, we're going in this direction. I mean, government needs to be purchasing software that is built securely. I mean, that's a lesson from SolarWinds. There were some practices there that should have been followed differently. And we're going to learn those lessons, and we're going to use our pulpit to really drive progress and change. But we want to do it in a way that works. And that's what we're committed to.
Yeah, and I think that's clear with the different orders that have come out, is that each and every one, as we were talking earlier, is high level in allowing for the industry to, to comment, industry and public as a whole. And I think that's one of the things that, we're going to continue to participate in. I know we've submitted a lot of things. I know we were talking backstage that you're getting a lot more feedback than previously expected on EOs. Is that, how's your office actually dealing with all of that interaction? Because normally, I don't think you're normally set up to deal with hundreds of responses to various different types of things.
No, thanks for acknowledging it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's been a lot of hard work on our team, and we've just, one of the first things that I realized when I came in is I went to the director and said, I need more people. I mean, we got this EO coming. It's going to take me 5-6 months just to get these people in. I need to start now. And we've just had nothing but support for that of, kind of whatever we needed. So we've built up. We're actually kind of completing another hiring round because we got to keep refreshed, just like all of you. That talent's very mobile right now. And we've been working our teams pretty hard, but it's exciting work. I mean, even if it means maybe sometimes a shorter stint in the office because it's asking so much, the dedication of folks, to the task is pretty impressive.
Have you had, since you had to ramp up so quickly, have you had any trouble hiring? I know all of us are, challenged these days in the hiring front. Is that something that you've been challenged with as well? Oh,
of course. I think government, you have a little, our competitive advantage is different than industries, but we have mission, we have things that we get to do, like write policy that impacts hundreds of federal agencies. That's pretty interesting. And I think it speaks to a lot of people to come do a stint. And so I'm not surprised by the caliber of people that are interested in coming to work for us, but it is hard. We're also a little bit more lumbery and boxy on, I think, the flexibility that industry started to apply to full remote options and really kind of having symbiotic remote teams. And we want to, but also sitting in the White House structure, it's tough. It's easier for a CISA maybe to do that. When you're in the White House, it's like you kind of got to be there too. Yeah. Not only just because there's secure work going on, but it's just the culture of the place. And so it's been a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I think many of us are challenged by maintaining the cultures that we have or that we want our companies and agencies to have while being remote, because you don't have the the water cooler meetings, right, or the side swipes, as I call them. So you don't have that kind of chance to socialize even. So it's a challenge that I think we're all facing. But I can imagine with new people rolling in, supporting your efforts, which are supporting all of ours, it's got to be a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
So. How are you thinking about supporting the departments and agencies with the implementation of the many EO, the guidance that the EO has provided once they're kind of more, set forward and promulgated out to the agencies?
I think about this one a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it's everything. Year one, I think we have reasonably high marks for getting the policy out, but now it's all implementation. And the same challenges and barriers that have been sitting behind agencies, efforts are all there still. So one thing we're doing is leaning on CISA. They run a program called CyberStat, and they have these workshops, which really help agencies work through challenging policy and develop runbooks, provide fora for feedback where they can ask their questions, technical questions, policy questions, process everything. And we just refabricated that whole program to be all about EO support. Like every single workshop's about some level of, as we put out a new policy, workshop. You know, Zero Trust came out, like workshop. And the highest level we've ever had was for the Zero Trust workshops, something like 700, 800 people,
Wow.
Which is, again, it's hard, these numbers may not be very meaningful to folks. There's a lot. It's like more than double the most interest we'd seen in a CISA-led federal workshop. And it indicates a couple things of like, okay, they're interested, like they're bought in, they want to do it, that's important to know, and they need help, also important to know. So we also have the CISO and CIO Council. There's some good efforts going on there to develop runbooks, playbooks, just take all the lessons learned. And we have the Technology Modernization Fund where we funded a few early on Zero Trust journeys. And that's really helpful because we have regular oversight meetings. I sit on the Technology Modernization Fund board. And we're learning what they're doing, you know? And that's really helpful because you don't always get that granular when you got 100+ agencies. And it's really helpful to have them come in and say, hey, presenting today is our brand new Zero Trust PM. Chris's first question, are you the PM for just the investments we made here or the entire implementation of M2209? Right answer was given, the entire implementation. Okay, good. That's terrific. How are you building out all of your staff plan? Oh, we're going to hire these feds for these positions. Why? For these reasons. Great. Why are you going tier 3 support over here? What positions are you looking for there? Great. Come back. I want to know how that's going, how it's working, because everybody needs the exact same thing you're building out to implement. And if we can have some higher level policy prescriptions, do things maybe centrally, or we can have work orders that could be centralized once we determine what all of the common requirements are for the journey where agencies are struggling and don't have the in-house skill sets, then maybe we have some new approaches to giving those, putting out work orders, and CISA can run those types of things where we don't have to have every agency learn on its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, it's going to be a journey. It'll be challenging. And I think like the first thing is just being humble about it. And like you'll never get one of us to come up here and say like, we're going to have Zero Trust in 2 years, right? I mean, that's a ridiculous statement. But we're going to make some real progress. And what we've learned by talking about folks who are really mature in like NSA and others, when they got to that first level of maturity across all the capability areas, they saw huge percentage drops in the number of events that they were trying to manage. Just huge. That's a big part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this manageable, right? The risk isn't going away, but we're trying to make it manageable. And I really do think that in a few years, we can make meaningful progress to that. And then even if it will take a lot longer to get to really button down.
That's great. Yeah, in order to be able to be successful at a plan, you first have to have one. And I think there's definitely a plan. So not only have you been working to revolutionize federal civilian cybersecurity over the past year, you're also dual-hatted as a deputy in the newly created National Cyber Directorate under the other Chris Inglis. How is the NCD supporting implementation of the EO, and what are some of the priorities from the NCD side for what we've already kind of covered?
Yeah, well, first of all, working for other Chris is fantastic. Chris Inglis is who we're talking about, and just really a top leader in our field. And he's building out this fantastic, talented team, which is just that, just having the extra added capacity. I'm a deputy in that organization. I sit over a federal wing. The way I describe it is I have one job in 2 offices. So if you think about that, the whole point is we don't want to duplicate effort. You got a whole oversight body sitting in the executive office of the president working in federal cybersecurity. The last thing you need is a second me running into me. So we may be the same person, and I think that makes sense for now. Over years, ONCD will continue to evolve, and there may be changes that get made to rationalize all of this, and I think that's great. Right now, you dropped this new organization into organizations that exist, and we're taking time to figure out how do we do that well, how do we kind of build this whole thing together. But for the time being, there's a lot of gaps. And so far, NCD is just coming in and saying, great, like, this needs to be coordinated, this needs more focus and attention, and we've got talented people to put on it and bring government together to get new impact there, workforce and other things that are, we've been trying to do a lot on for a while, but I think there will be a really good strategic focus now that we've got this office.
I never thought of it that way, that actually having, one, normally it's, one person or two people, trying to juggle that, but actually having one person doing one job, but half time or some percentage of the time. That's a pretty interesting way to look at it. And
well, I
I'm glad that we're
integrate
not
the
in
teams,
that. Yeah.
It's just I make sure that there's no daylight,
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, with that, I want to thank you. Insightful across the board. Got to see a little bit inside of your day-to-day, and want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us here today and to share that with everybody here in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thank you.